Hi, I'm Sarah from Let's Talk Charlotte Mason. If you're exploring a Charlotte Mason education while you're raising a PDA or otherwise neurodivergent child, then you may feel both deeply drawn to the beauty of this philosophy and also deeply unsure whether your child could realistically fit within it and if it might actually work for your child at all. You may see peaceful nature walks and obedient children and tidy narration notebooks and quiet mornings, rhythmic routines, and you may quietly think, that could never ever be us. And especially when your homeschool currently feels more like nervous system management and emotional recovery and constant flexibility, unfinished plans, constant movement, role play, negotiation, and even survival mode. But many parents are surprised to discover that beneath the aesthetic often associated with Charlotte Mason, her philosophy contains ideas that actually support neurodivergent children beautifully, especially when they're separated from rigid interpretations of her theory. At the same time, some traditional applications of Charlotte Mason can absolutely create challenges for PDA children if approached inflexibly. So let's gently unpack the philosophy through a neurodivergent lens today. First, we have to ask, who is Charlotte Mason? She was a British educator who grew up in the 1800s, who believed that children are whole persons deserving of respect, rich ideas, and a meaningful education. Her approach focused less on rote memorization, worksheets, rewards, punishments, and dry academics, and it focused so much more on living books and habits and narration and nature study and the beauty of the natural world around us, relationships, and cultivating a lifelong love of learning. So many homeschooling families are drawn to Charlotte because her philosophy feels gentle and literary and wonder-filled and deeply human. A big part of her philosophy is that children are born persons. This is perhaps the most neurodivergent-friendly area within her entire philosophy. Charlotte believed that children are not empty vessels that we fill with information. They're not behavior projects, and they're not problems to control. They are full people already possessing minds, emotions, dignity, ideas, preferences, and inner lives that are worthy of our respect. For PDA and neurodivergent children especially, this principle matters enormously. It shifts the question from how do I force this child into compliance to how do I support this whole person well. That is a radically different foundation. Charlotte Mason used living books rather than the dull kind of textbooks that we all experienced growing up. Living books are a number of things. They're engaging, they're story rich, they're emotionally alive, they're filled with living ideas that help your child grow in so many ways, and they are well written by passionate authors. And this can work beautifully for neurodivergent children because stories are often easier to connect with emotionally, and interest increases the nervous system safety, and rich language builds understanding naturally. However, PDA children still may resist reading if it feels like a demand or performance-based. The philosophy itself is not the problem. Often it's the pressure surrounding the philosophy. One of Charlotte's best ideas was short lessons. She strongly advocated for short lessons, especially for younger children. This can be incredibly supportive for neurodivergent learners because attention and processing demands are reduced, the overwhelm is minimized, transitions are so much more gentle, and learning remains mentally fresh. For PDA children particularly, tiny lessons often work far better than prolonged insistence. A successful 5-minute lesson may accomplish more than a full 40-minute battle that's stressful to both child and teacher. Then there's narration. It's beautiful in theory, but complicated for PDA. Narration is the practice of having children retell ideas in their own words after they've read something or have had something read to them. The purpose is relationship with ideas, comprehension, and active thinking rather than giving them quizzes or worksheets. For many neurodivergent children, narration can be wonderful when it's flexible, it's conversational, it's playful, it could be delayed, movement-based, or creatively expressed. But for PDA children, formal narration very quickly can feel like testing, performance, demand, or evaluation. This is where many families need adaptation. The heart of narration is personal connection with the ideas. It's not forcing a specific output method. Next, there's nature study and sensory regulation. So, nature study is central within a Charlotte Mason education. This often pairs beautifully with neurodivergent needs because outdoor environments can support regulation and movement is naturally included. Sensory experiences are so rich and learning happens through observation rather than pressure. However, some children may struggle with either sensory overwhelm, the transitions, bugs, unpredictability, heat, especially in our Australian summers, I just got to say, it's so hot, or social expectations that happen around outings. And again, flexibility really matters. So nature study doesn't have to look picturesque to be meaningful. Watching rain from the window still counts. Then we come to the dreaded habit training. This is the area that often feels most difficult. And Charlotte Mason rightfully placed significant emphasis on habit formation for children. And this can become very complicated for PDA families because many modern interpretations of habit training, they lean heavily on compliance, repetition, external control, and behavioral expectations, where PDA nervous systems often react strongly to perceived pressure and control. So this means that those more modern interpretations don't necessarily work. This does not mean that habits are impossible. However, it may mean slower pacing of habits, more collaboration with your child, a reduce of demands, a retweaking of how you phrase demands for your child, co-regulation, flexibility, and a much gentler approach for habit formation. Doing this, the goal shifts from how do I make my child comply to how do we build sustainable rhythms that support my child's well-being. Sometimes Charlotte Mason spaces unintentionally become highly rule-focused, but Charlotte herself repeatedly emphasized atmosphere, respect, and a living connection. One of her famous ideas was that education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. For neurodivergent children especially, atmosphere matters. Nervous system safety matters. Emotional connection matters. And relationship profoundly affects their learning accessibility. It's important to remember that the Charlotte Mason aesthetic that we see on the internet is not the philosophy. This is so important. Many parents feel discouraged because their home doesn't resemble the linen dresses, the quiet tea times, the watercolor notebooks, calm children pictured under trees, or beautifully ordered mornings where everyone just seems to be in harmony. But this aesthetic that's often associated with Charlotte Mason is not the core of her philosophy at all. A neurodivergent Charlotte Mason homeschool may include headphones and movement and pacing, flexible schedules, audiobooks, emotional recovery days where you do nothing, Lego during read-alouds, messy nature collections and sensory tools, or even lessons that are done on the trampoline. This doesn't make it any less Charlotte Mason. You are allowed to adapt. This is perhaps one of the most important encouragements I can give you, that you are allowed to shorten lessons. Even the short 15-minute lessons can be shortened even more to 5 if needed. Delay academics if you think it's necessary. Modify your narration prompts and how you do this and what's required when. Reduce the demands for your child if needed. Protect their nervous system safety. Prioritize your relationship with them and use accommodations and rethink what learning looks like for your child. Adapting for disability or neurodivergence is not watering down education. It is responsive and responsible teaching. The Charlotte Mason philosophy is not ultimately about producing perfectly behaved children performing beautiful lessons, that could be an artwork and things that could be hung up in a gallery. At its heart, it's about respecting personhood, nourishing minds with living ideas, cultivating wonder, and building meaningful relationships with the world around us. For many PDA and neurodivergent children, these principles can actually provide a deeply human and supportive educational foundation when approached with flexibility, compassion, and nervous system awareness. Your homeschool may never look as conventional as other people that you see on the internet, but it can still be rich, beautiful, and deeply alive. I hope this has given you some encouragement. I'll see you next time.